As I've listened to the stories of thousands of women of all ages, in all kinds of stages, through the years, I've kept their stories locked in the vault of my heart. I feel as if they've been walking around with me all through these years. They've bothered me. They've prodded me. And sometimes kept me up at night. Ultimately, they've increased my passion to reframe and reimagine the powerful positions of mother and matriarch within the family system. I'm a problem solver, so I set out to find a way to perhaps change the trajectory of this silent and sad scenario about a dynamic yet untapped source of potential and purpose sitting in our homes and churches. It is time to come to the table, Heartlifters, and unleash the power of maternal presence into the world. Welcome to Mothering for the Ages, our 2025 theme here on today's Heartlift. I'm Janelle. I am your guide here on this heartlifting journey. I invite you to grab a pen, a journal, and a cup of something really delicious. May today's conversation give you clarity, courage, and a revived sense of camaraderie. You see, you're not on this journey alone. We are unified as Heartlifters and committed to bringing change into the world, one heart at a time. Oh, Heartlifters, we are going down under today. I'm so excited. We have with us Sarah Boyd. She is a writer, an entrepreneur, and a child and adolescent developmental expert. Sarah, welcome to the show with your brand new book, Turn Down the Noise. Welcome.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to have this conversation.
Thank you for getting up so early.
It is a little bit early here in Australia at the moment.
Yes. I am so thankful that your book came across my desk. Thank you to Tyndall Refresh for bringing it to me. I am just going to shout this book out to the entire world because, Sarah, it is vitally necessary. So, Sarah, the subtitle of your book is as invigorating as the title, a practical guide, which we're all about nuts and bolts here, to building, the word placement, a practical guide to building an emotionally healthy family in a chronically overstimulated world. Well, that's what we're all about here in the Heartlift community is emotional and spiritual health. Why this book? Why now?
Oh, that's such a great question. I feel like in my work with families and parents who are raising kids of all unique temperaments and personalities and different needs, there's a lot in the conversation at the moment. People are bringing their expertise to talk about maybe if there's been trauma in someone's background, or maybe if there's been specific temperament or developmental issues. And I felt like what was missing from the conversation was a focus on the environment that we're living in.
Thank you.
As you're probably aware, the rates of clinical anxiety and depression for children and adolescents has grown significantly in the past decade. Mm-hmm. And what I found confusing is that as a generation and as a society, we are typically more educated on resilience and emotional health than ever before. Yeah. There's more people talking about it. Just like yourself, we're losing the stigma potentially of going to therapy. There's more individualized support, and yet the statistics are still going in the wrong direction. And so I suppose I wanted to offer another perspective, which is essentially, what if all of these emotions and these diagnoses and stuff aren't the problem, but they're rather symptoms of the problem? Yeah. Because what if the environment that we're in is actually causing us not to thrive how we've been created to?
So well said. So well said, because I like to call that the emotional atmosphere inside of the home. And 13 years of private practice here, of course, I'm going to be dealing with people, family systems that aren't as we would say, securely attached. Like
Yeah.
myself, I was insecure, avoidant attachment. My community is well aware of attachment theory and all of that. So I would try to help my clients understand, when you were 3 and this was going on around you, that's not normal.
Mm.
Did you find that same, like they would go, but I was only 3. I was only 6 months old. I was only a 5-year-old. None of that would have affected me. And I was just like profoundly gobsmacked is the word I know to say. Like just, but no, you have to understand that you're soaking that in, even if you aren't a highly sensitive child, which you write a lot about, thankfully. Did you notice that as well, that perhaps that understanding that these things really do affect us, the atmosphere?
Yeah, I think it's so true because you think sometimes we don't have memories of that time in our life,
Correct.
or it's, we think, oh, we were just children. I think when you come to understand child development and you really understand that the family of origin that you grew up in essentially defines what you believe is normal. And I don't
Oh,
think it's until you get to school age or teenage that you go and see other people's families and you think, hang on a second, they do things differently, or their parent isn't like my parent.
yeah.
You begin to have this awakening of what you thought was normal. I use the example sometimes when my husband and I got married. I still remember the first time we went grocery shopping together because even just the brand of milk we thought
That's
was like
so
milk.
appropriate. Yes.
It was so different.
Yes.
Um, yeah.
And
And
you've
so,
got to maneuver that and you've got to adjust and yes, for sure.
yeah.
That's really a
Uh,
good example. Yes.
Yeah, so I think particularly when it comes to emotional health, which is sometimes more invisible, I think for
Hmm.
individuals who have gone through the trauma of physical abuse or other types of abuse that are more obvious to other people, I do feel like we're beginning to see individuals who've maybe gone through a family upbringing that wasn't emotionally healthy start to be able to see that with insight. And obviously, through your work, that's what you've been helping people do as well.
As are you. Heartlifter, I want to take just a pause here to announce, drumroll please, the new collaborative book that I am involved with just launched this week. Healthy Habits for the Home Rooted in Rhythms. I wrote chapter 1, The Emotional Air We Breathe, the air we breathe. And it has all to do with this emotional atmosphere, environment that Sarah and I are talking about today. We are in the Lenten season and we are focusing on mothering throughout this year. And so this chapter, if you are kind of scratching your head and going, I really don't know what Janelle and Sarah are talking about, like what is she talking about when she says the environment that children are surrounded by? And then I added how I call it the emotional air that we breathe, the emotional atmosphere, and how that deeply affects us as children and affects our development. And so I write a very candid, vulnerable story about my own journey in my family of origin in this chapter. And then I identify the 4 emotional airs, which are the secure attachment pieces. So if you're wondering, or perhaps know someone, or maybe even this would be great to give to the children's pastors at my church, please order your copy. Every penny of the sale of this book is going to support Heartlifter International, my nonprofit, and that supports this podcast, which keeps us ad-free. It is my goal to keep us ad-free because I want to give you as much information as possible. So you can go order this book, order 5, 10 copies. They are just, the book is so good And each chapter is rich and just weaves a beautiful theme of emotional health and wellness for family within it. We have Mother's Day coming up. We have Father's Day coming up. And I just think this would be a great resource to offer to anyone in the mothering, caregiving role, wherever that might be. Let's get back to my conversation with Sarah. And so Turn Down the Noise became this incredible outpouring, I think, of the work you had been doing prior to that on Resilient Little Hearts. So just please tell all the mamas, all of us, mothers of all ages, phases, and stages, about that incredible work that you're doing with Resilient Little Hearts. I'm so obsessed.
Thank you. Yeah, I started Resilient Little Hearts as an educational company. I started it in, I don't even know, 2018, because I really saw that resilience and emotional health is one of the core needs that we want to train our children in. It's absolutely everything, because as much as we, particularly as mamas, wish that we could just protect our children from everything they're going to go through, we can't. But one of the things that we can do is give them that solid foundation in a healthy relationship with us, teach them emotional coping skills. And so essentially the work centers around both building attachment and connection with children, and also us becoming healthier as parents in order to help facilitate their emotional health. So we cover all kinds of topics in parenting, but yeah, it's a joy to get to do that work. Yeah.
But in Turn Down the Noise, one of the things that I really love are illustrations. And you bring in very soon in the book this overstimulation iceberg. Now, I mentioned to you before we got started, we're well aware in this community about overstimulation. We've had many guests talk to us about adults in the sense of how we can put down our phones, digital detox, all of those familiar topics. But you're honing in right in that intersection of what makes my heart beat. And that would be having an emotionally healthy set of parents or caregiver, or perhaps someone who's just operating in the maternal, right? This book that I'm currently working on, there were a lot of women that were maternal and mothered without birthing their own children. So we all have this maternal presence in the world. And it's very critical, I think, that the mother, that person operating in the maternal, be emotionally healthy.
Yes.
Okay. And my journey was I wasn't. So I have learned the hard way, but now we want to call back to younger women.
I love that you share that, because it's actually not possible to build an emotionally healthy home if you don't yourself become an emotionally healthy parent.
Okay.
As much as we'd like to say, do as I say and not as I do,
Ooh.
unfortunately, that's not how children work, and they are watching us more than they're listening to us. I wish they would listen more sometimes, but they're really watching who we are in the world and how we are managing ourselves and our environment. So I love your perspective on that.
Well, you share it, right? And so you bring in this overstimulation iceberg. And when you have the book in your hands or on Kindle, Heartlifters, it's on page 16. You're going to just learn so much, because our mantra is always learning and always listening. So I want to read this, and then I want to ask you some serious old questions about this iceberg. Looking at the whole picture, this is what you write, and this is what I love so much, because we have to look at the whole picture. Your passion for wholeness is so vital. Along with sensory input, overstimulation is also caused by a buildup of other noise underneath the surface. Imagine, okay. All right, mamas, listen. Imagine it's 5 p.m. Oh, we've been there. Many of you are there right now. And you're attempting to make dinner while simultaneously managing your children's needs, a sensory input nightmare, And then you add any variety of additional circumstances. You didn't sleep the night before. We're talking to you, Mama. You're stressed out about a financial situation. Been there. You just had a conversation with someone who made you really angry. On the other hand, this is it. How would you feel in this same situation if you had had a good night of sleep, felt steady about your finances, and just spent some time with one of your closest friends? Someone who sees you, hears you, knows you, loves you, and you know you belong. Overstimulation isn't just about the sensory input in a particular situation. It's also influenced by what's going on under the surface. And so I will, if you give permission, copy and paste a little picture of this for Instagram when it comes out. But please get the book, guys. So this overstimulation iceberg, talk to me about this. Sensory overwhelm, and then what's going on under the surface of everything is internal stress. How did you come up with this?
Well, I think because a lot of the time I view the explosions that we have as parents that we wish we didn't have, when we say the things we wish we didn't say, or we scream or whatever, and we have to repair, I see it as a volcano. And so you think of levels of a volcano. A lot of times we're only aware of the moment of explosion. We only become aware when we've said the wrong thing or just before we say it. But actually it builds up a long time beforehand, and it builds up through all of the stuff that's going on that we have to manage in our adult world that our children are completely unaware of.
So unaware. Yes.
So unaware. So we're dealing with the stresses, sleep deprivation, anything that's going on in our personal life, in our intimate relationships, in our friendships, all of that sort of stuff.
Marriage?
Marriage, yes, 100%. If you're working outside of the home, work as well. And so all of this is underneath the surface. And so when you come into a high demand situation or a high sensory situation that in and of itself is overwhelming, you come to it with something already. And so it's actually important to get a little bit of awareness about that, because a lot of times parents feel a lot of guilt and shame about that moment of explosion.
Or repression. I'm going to add that aspect because as my Heartlifters know, my husband and I were both raised in alcoholic homes where repression. And so you just don't ever use your voice. You just, the only way is when you do have an explosion. And so that's what we're trying to do here is help mamas. Is it safe to say avoid an explosion? Because you're going to have them. We're all human. But perhaps to really, as you write here, cultivate emotional co-regulation and maturity. Okay.
Yeah, 100%. We're still always going to have them. I also think it's important to know that we can reduce them and reduce the length of them. But also to have some awareness, because if you're just in a cycle all the time of like explosion or repression and then guilt, and then I just promise I won't do it again, with no awareness as to why it built to that point, you're really unequipped to do anything differently the next time.
Yes,
and so
Sarah.
Awareness matters a lot.
It's the key. It's the beginning. Right? Awareness is the first step. And then once you have awareness, you can't turn back. So it's like once you become aware, then you know better. That's how I say it. You kind of know better. And so therefore you need to try to do better. So in light of that, the first part of your book is beautiful. The first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 chapter is how loud is your world, the individual's world, the child's world, the parent's world, the state of the world. I love that. So Heartlifters, you get that and you read 1 through 5, because I'm going right on to part 2, where you talk about, raising emotionally healthy children. How? Please add your voice to the conversation. Chapter 6, listen, you guys, this is so good. Chapter 6, self-regulation, cultivating emotional maturity. Chapter 7, co-regulation, being your child's safe place. I just had a mama say to me yesterday, how do I co-regulate her when I feel like I'm going to have a nervous breakdown?
Mm.
Okay.
Yes,
We'll come
it's
back to
the
that.
hardest thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's
Connection,
the
building
hardest
healthy
thing.
attachment, and then coping skills, giving children emotional tools. So let's go back to how do we cultivate our own emotional maturity, which then, right, leads us to being able to co-regulate and have our mirror neurons be able to be good mirror neurons going into the child.
Yes. It's the biggest challenge of our lives. It's one of the hardest things about parenting.
It is, and I didn't do it right. I made so many mistakes because I said, my journey has been one of learning this while in the process of mothering. And so now that my children are all adult children, ages 34, the twins, and 38, it's like we've had to go back and we still are in the midst of repairing. Sorry, we didn't know how to handle conflict. We didn't do repair correctly. And we raised you in an evangelical mindset. So, oh my gosh. Okay. So that's just my story.
No,
How do we cultivate this? Help.
I love that you share that though, because I do think that we're all learning. I don't think we become emotionally mature until we're put in a situation of responsibility for other people. Because
That's good.
responsibility and growth and accepting the reality of our lives and trying to do the best with what we've been given is essentially how maturity begins to grow.
Mm.
And so that it does, as you have your first child or whether you're, like you said, you're in a maternal role in people's lives, it's not like, you suddenly have a child enter your life and you're instantly emotionally mature. It's
Ugh,
not something that happens.
that's good to know.
Yeah. Essentially, though, self-regulation is our ability to control our emotional response in a
Mhm.
moment so it doesn't negatively impact our relationships, our work, our health, all of that, and then be able to know what to do with those emotions. So if you're in a meeting with a boss or a leader and they say something you don't like, self-regulation is the thing that stops you from saying exactly what you want to say. Um,
Yes.
but then at the same time, being able to hold space for those same emotions later when contextually it's safer to do so and work through it.
Hmm.
And in our own lives, self-regulation neurologically is actually really controlled by the part of our brain called the prefrontal cortex. And so that's the part of the brain that's involved in attention, memory, decision making, emotional regulation, self-control. And that part of the brain doesn't reach complete maturity until young adulthood. So for some individuals, it's up to 25 years old.
Or
And
older. Yeah, I was just
or
listening
older.
again, like doing more research on it and thinking, okay, some it's close to 30. Can even be
Yes.
a little older. I'm like, okay, that
Yes.
lowers my expectations as a mom of adult children too, and offering a lot more patience and grace. And yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. I think it's so great though that you've, gone in and researched that because I know for myself, understanding that exactly like you said, has given me a lot more patience and grace with my children because
Yeah.
their prefrontal cortex is not developed. It only reaches foundational maturity at 6 or 7 years old, up to adolescence again at 12 years old. There's another big growth. And so when we talk about self-regulation and co-regulation, they're the same process. Self is I'm doing it for myself.
Yes.
Co-regulation is I'm helping my child do it until they develop self-regulation.
Right.
And
Which do you
essentially,
have? What age would that be? Like if we, so we can set like perhaps a imperfect expectation for a young mama. When might that start swirling around in that little one's prefrontal?
so in terms of prefrontal cortex, I would say definitely around 7 years old, they learn to get a little bit more of a hold on their emotions. We're seeing a lessening of like tantrums and that sort
Mm.
of behavior. But interestingly, the first 7 years of life are a high need for co-regulation for parents. And then it kind of not dips. It's not like they don't need you anymore, but it kind of dips in intensity until you hit adolescence.
Mhm.
And adolescence is actually another stage where they're really needing that co-regulation with you again. It looks very different than it
It
did with
does.
2 year old. But those of you that are in that season or walk through that season, you'll know it. They all of a sudden you feel like, oh, I need to be around, like I need to be here for them
Oh, that's
more
good.
than I felt
Hmm.
like for my maybe 8 or 9 year old.
Hmm.
And so it does kind of go in a bit of a U shape. Um, but for ourselves and for our children, it really comes down to three things. The first one is our connected relationships.
Mm.
So for children, it's their relationships with us. It's for us. Do we have at least someone who's safe to talk to?
Yes. Yes.
Secondly, the boundaries and practices we have in our life, like do we prioritize sleep that's within our control?
Yes.
Obviously, with young ones, we don't have control, but our health and our boundaries. And then thirdly is our level of strength and our emotional coping skills. Do we have tools to go to when things get hard? Do we know what things could help us? And so
Hmm.
essentially that's what I unpack in detail in that section of the book is how to kind of
Okay.
strengthen and build those three things.
Okay. How do we build our capacity? Been studying a lot about missing capacity, just because of my own life and some others in my life. Just there is a thing called missing capacity. You didn't get it as a child, and so
Yeah.
therefore, but we can grow our capacity. Like, how would you perhaps give us a couple ways that someone who is listening can go, okay, I need to develop more capacity in co-regulating or more capacity in my own self-regulation? What's just a tool or two? I know they're in the book, but
Yeah, no. So I go through, I think it's about 8 tools in the book, in
eight.
terms of like coping school skills. Sorry. One of them is called reframing.
Hmm.
So reframing is essentially your situation hasn't changed. So there's
Right.
nothing different about what you're in. But reframing is actively reinterpreting the meaning of your situation. So a
Okay.
lot of times we think our emotions just come from what we've gone through. Um, when I was 27 years old, I got diagnosed with cancer, and it was one of those moments in my,
Sarah.
yeah, it was one of those pivotal moments in my life where
Hmm.
it came out of nowhere. I was still in young adulthood, so I was still in that naivety of life's
Wow.
going to be awesome for me. No,
Right. I've got a
no
long, big
bad
life
things.
ahead.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
And it kind of came crashing in for me, and I had 18 months of treatment and fatigue from the treatment. So my life was kind of on hold.
Wow.
And in that situation, as many situations that a lot of us go through, I couldn't do anything to change it. It wasn't like I could just make a different decision and I wouldn't be in the situation. And
Did you
so,
have children at that time?
no, it was
No.
before children.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And so reframing is essentially looking at the same situation and asking yourself different questions like what are some good things within this bad situation? What's the opportunity here within this challenge that I'm missing? What would I tell my best friend if they were
Mm.
in this situation? What can I
Hmm.
acknowledge myself for managing this situation? And so
Hmm.
reframing is a great emotional coping skill. I think we sometimes do it unconsciously, but sometimes when we get stuck
Hmm.
in a negative or challenging situation,
Very stuck. That's what I'd like to know. Yeah, I'm very, very stuck, Sarah. So how do I unstick?
yes.
You
And
know?
sometimes it's as simple as journaling and actually looking at those questions and writing the situation down and actually overtly looking at it in terms of like, what is the meaning that I'm making about the situation? Is that meaning true? Is it
Hmm.
helpful? Is it actually going to be empowering for me to move forward in the situation? And it's not about creating fake meaning, but it is about
Right.
trying to see it from a different perspective, helps us cognitively cope with hard things.
Really hard things, which there are really hard things in life. In your overstimulation iceberg, I'll just say what's at the at the tip of the iceberg, you have heat, time pressure, hunger, noise, and crying. Okay, those are the things like when maybe we're perhaps at that 5 p.m. hour and or we're at an escalated tantrum at the checkout counter. I can go on. That's heat, that's time pressure, that's hunger, that's noise, that's crying. Most stores now have really loud music on. It's just there's just so much overstimulation in the world. But underneath the water there with the internal stress, what you're saying is there may be some unresolved trauma, exhaustion,
Yeah.
additional needs, stress from work or school. We've said these emotional triggers, anxiety about the future, health issue. Okay, all of those things are what you're talking about that come into us, into our fabric, and that we have to self-regulate.
Mm.
So we have to have tools in our toolbox, and one of those tools is reframing. What if I'm in a heated time and like a real stress time, and I'm not really able to go, well, let me just reframe this.
Yeah. One of my favorite strategies for the moment is interrupt the build-up, is what I call it.
Oh, yes, that's what I needed. Yes.
Yes. So again, going back to the analogy of the volcano, um, if you think about the moment of eruption or when you kind of do the thing you don't want to do as like a 10 out of 10, we want to start paying attention to when it's rising, because typically at the rising, like you said, you've got all that stuff under the surface. Also in home, you've likely held your patience with your toddler 10 times before it actually, explodes. You've likely like held yourself for hours and hours and hours. And
Correct.
essentially what interrupt the build-up is a strategy where you actually stop yourself at a 6 or 7 out of 10 before you're
Okay.
actually at eruption, and you specifically and intentionally do something to change your emotional state.
Love
So
this.
it's as simple as having a silly dance party in your kitchen, putting your kids in the pram and going out for a walk, locking yourself in the bathroom if your children are safe, and just taking 5 minutes for yourself.
Yes.
Um, one of
Yes.
my
Screaming into your pillow. Yes.
One of my personal favorites in the summer is just like making sure my children are safe and just going and sitting in the car and turning the air conditioning on for 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's so good. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, and your children are 9 and 11, so that's
Yes,
good. You can do that
they're
for
older.
sure.
I can
But there
do
are
that.
things you can do at all ages and making sure that they're safe for sure. I love that. I love the interrupt, the build up. It's applicable to where I'm at in my life right now
Yeah.
to increase my awareness. If you don't have awareness, start with awareness. But then, I mean, we can feel it. We
Yes.
can feel it rising. Every one of
And I
us can
feel
feel it.
like mums don't give themselves enough credit, because as
Thank
much
you.
as we feel that guilt for whenever we do the kind of quote unquote wrong thing, we've held it together for a long time before that.
Yes.
Like mums are so patient. Children have no idea how patient
Correct.
we are.
I love that so much. You're
Yeah.
just saying self-compassion here. Don't forget,
Yes,
ring the bell. Yes.
yes,
Yes. D D D
100%.
D D.
Yeah,
Okay, I got this question off of the back of the book. It was
yeah.
a statement, not a question, but I have to ask you this. Why does our brain often lead to this overreaction we're talking about right now? Why does our brain often lead to overreaction in the hard parenting moments?
Hmm.
Now, the answer seems maybe simple, but I have a feeling you have something really wise to say to us.
Well, I hope so.
You do. I know
You're
you
very
do.
kind. You're very kind.
I know you do.
It really comes back to what I was talking about before with the prefrontal cortex,
Okay.
because the thing that most people don't know about our prefrontal cortex is it's different to the rest of our brain. The rest of our brain, our limbic brain, keeps our body alive and all of that sort of stuff. Think about that as a stable, steady car. It's the car you want to take cross country on your long family trip. It's just stable. It doesn't take a lot of energy, but it's not fast moving. The
Okay.
prefrontal cortex can help you in the moment, like in the moment, make a really great decision, in the moment, self regulate and control yourself. but it also has a very short, it is like an energy sucker. So think about it like a race
Ah,
car. It's the car that you want to like race 100 meters, and then it loses glucose and loses energy, and it can be restored again if you have
yeah,
some rest and some time, all things that as parents we typically don't have a lot of.
that's
And
right.
so that's part of the challenge with parenting is that we're using our prefrontal cortex to kind of manage our state, control
Mm,
ourselves, make good decisions for ourselves and our children. And it also, you'll probably notice too, I know for myself, it's towards the end of the day. It's when we're exhausted. It's when our brain has
yes,
lost fuel that it's like, it's the hard moment. We've got nothing left.
right.
And so it actually has to do with when we understand that about our brain, it can be helpful for us, just as what you said before, to have some more self-care, to try to prioritize our own rest when we can. And even if the rest
Mhm.
is not sleep, but just
Right.
doing some activities that
Yeah.
you enjoy,
But
I
feed
think
your soul. Feed your soul.
yes,
Yep.
parenting can just sometimes feel like a gauntlet of never-ending things to do.
Never ending cycle of now is what I used to teach. Yes, it is the
Yes,
never
I
ending
love
cycle
that.
of now. Never stops. It's always
Yes,
now, right now. Yes.
yes.
So right now
And
job.
so yeah, and when you do those things that fill your soul, it re-energizes your brain again and actually then gives you the capacity. Because I think most parents think about how you feel when you've had a good night's sleep, you've had a
Mm,
great meal, you've hung out with people that you love.
mm.
We're all the best version of ourselves. Like,
It's
we should
really
be our
hard.
children.
Yes. I'm
Yes.
the best version of myself when I'm alone after a massage and had a cup of coffee
Yes.
and at a store by
Yes.
myself and I've journaled and done retail therapy. Yes, I'm
Yes.
the best version.
But the amazing thing about it is as we practice that self control and self-regulation, it builds our character and our capacity. So the more
Oof.
we do it, the more we grow into it. And that's how we develop, I suppose, emotional maturity over time.
Mhm. Would you agree with this tenet that I seem to have? This, because you just said it from 0 to 7. And I would add from conception in the time in the womb to 7 that it is, oh, if a mama could get the vision, if the maternal caregiver, and we're just talking about mamas and the maternal presence right now. That's what I pound the table over because I actually do think that it is the most critical aspect of the maturation of a child, that they have to have a vision. Like a mama has to know this is the most important thing that I will ever do in my whole entire life. No matter what your aspirations are, no matter how much passion you have for changing the world, there really truly is nothing. What is that old saying? The hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. There really is no greater function than giving a child the best foundation possible. Is that something that I can say? Yeah, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I love that. I love the quote from Mother Teresa when she was asked, "How can I change the world?" And she says, "Go home and love your family."
Yes. Sorry, I'm trying to hold in my enthusiasm.
Yeah,
And this was a maternal presence who had no children of her own.
yeah,
She was so mothering. Yeah.
yeah.
Go home and love your children.
Go home and love your children. Because I think in our day to day, and I love what you're talking about, we everyone is craving that maternal loving care
Oh.
of
Mm.
grace and of someone who thinks about them and cares
Mhm.
about them.
Mhm.
And I love that vision element too, because I think, like you mentioned, it can be grueling, like
It
years and
is grueling.
years.
This
Like,
not can
a
be.
lot. It's so
Mothering
true.
for the long haul is it takes a hero's journey,
Yes.
you know?
And without that vision, like you kind of lose your why as to why you're putting in all the
Yes.
work. So I think that vision of and having people like yourself reminding mums of it's important
Mhm.
what we do matters. Because part of the challenge, my girlfriends and I joke, it's like the longest long-term investment of your life, because it's not until they're even adults that they really would even have capacity to say, "Hey, that was really great what you did, Mum."
Oh, trust me. It's
Yes.
so nice when they do, though. The
Yeah.
sweetest day ever.
Yes,
It's
because
just like,
typically
yes,
what you're getting is like, you're the worst ever because you've
yes.
set a boundary or you've done something else. And so you need other people's voices of encouragement in
Yeah.
that. It's like, oh no,
Yeah.
I'm not the worst ever. I was just setting a boundary.
You are not. Yes, you are actually being the greatest gift.
Yeah.
But like you said, it may be until their 30s.
Yes. Yes.
It's a long wait. It is a
Yeah.
long wait. You do get little glimmers along the way, as we say, right? Little glimmers on Mother's Day and things. Well, Sarah,
Love that.
before I let you go, there are just so many questions. I really, sincerely, I do say this a lot on the show, but you are just someone I feel like we could talk to and get so much wisdom from. So everyone, you must turn down the noise, get this book, please, and share it with mamas of all ages, anyone, because quite honestly, Sarah, I'm sitting here applying it to my marriage today. Been
That's
married
awesome.
41 years, 40, almost 41, and newly retired husband. So he's home all the time. And so this is a massive part of our development. And so even today, I had to catch myself at 6 and 7 and go, oh, bring
Bring
it
it
down,
down.
bring it down, bring it down. Let's interrupt. Let's interrupt this buildup. What do we need? I do want everyone to understand about the neuroscience of children's emotions because I think it's super, super important. Well, first of all, did we even answer why does our brain often lead to overreaction in the hard parenting moments? Because of the buildup. That's what we said, right?
Because
I'll
of the
make sure.
build-up. Yeah.
Okay, I'm
Because
just so excited I'm getting lost.
it's good. It's
Sorry,
good.
guys. You know me. What do we need to understand about the neuroscience of children's emotions? What do we need to understand about that in order, you say, to manage our own expectations to their reactions? I think that one question, would you just develop a whole workshop or something around it? Because I think that would help so much
Mm.
with misaligned expectation.
Yes, I completely agree, because sometimes we don't understand what's just normal develop. What's normal for a 3-year-old? What's
Well, why
normal
would
for
we
you?
haven't studied it in
Yeah.
college like you did in university.
Yes.
So
Yes. And then it freaks out if we see aggression. We're like, are they going to be on a Netflix show in the future? Or are they, have I, done
have I
whatever?
birthed a
And
psychopath? I know it's not funny. Or a
yeah.
narcissist, or yeah, it's not funny.
Yes.
No,
Yeah.
this is very
Yes.
serious. Yes.
So I think one of the biggest things, the core things, is up until the age of 7, they haven't developed even, like, 90% of brain development occurs by between 5 to 7 years, up to 5 to 7 years old. And so under 7 years old, children really do not have the neurological capacity to
Hmm.
control their emotions. So
Right.
anything they're feeling, they just let it out.
Hmm.
Some kids, they naturally, with their temperament, they don't want to let it out, but it's just there. It's kind of out. They haven't developed skills for that. And I think
Hmm.
that in that, it's developmentally normal for toddlers to have tantrums. It's developmentally normal for tweens to backtalk. It's developmentally normal for teenagers to make decisions where they haven't thought through the consequences.
Sure.
And so
Oh.
it's not about us going, well, it's normal, so just let them have it. Because
Hmm.
obviously our role is to come alongside them and guide them.
Hmm.
But coming to the situation of going, oh, this is normal. My 2-year-old is having tantrums all day. They didn't sleep. There's nothing wrong with me as a parent. There's nothing wrong with my child. They're just a 2-year-old, really helps your own internal voice
Yeah.
regulate of how you're going to then deal with it, as opposed to, why won't you just stop? I've done everything right. I wish I've given you love, and you're still tantruming. It's a different energy that you bring to then coming in and doing whatever you need to do in that situation.
Yeah, and I think you would probably add it's typically normal for a toddler turning preschooler to be selfish and to not want to share, right?
Yes.
Okay, so if there's a child that just perpetually is mine, I don't want to share, any word of encouragement?
If they don't want to share,
Uh-huh.
yes. Yes. Lots and lots of children go through
Lots.
that stage. Lots of children, particularly children if they have a temperament that is a little bit more anxious too. They don't want anyone touching their things. So I think
Oh.
it's nuanced as well. You know your own child. Firstly, I would say that kids grow out. There are a lot of things, and I mean, you can speak to this so much, but there are a lot of things children just grow out of,
Hmm.
really, as they age and become more mature.
Yes.
And our role as parents in that situation is teaching them, sharing. We share because we love one another. We share,
Yeah.
and you bring your values to it, and that's your.
Hmm.
I see that space as a sacred opportunity to get to disciple our
Mm.
children
Oh,
because
you
it,
have, that's beautiful. So say it again, say it again. So good.
I see that space as a sacred opportunity to disciple our children.
It's really, really beautiful, Sarah. Hmm.
It's in those times where they're struggling or their
Hmm.
behavior is, immature because it is, they're young, they're growing, that we get to teach them what it means to be healthy,
Yeah.
emotionally, spiritually mature people. And we get to do that in that space with them.
Yeah. Thank you for normalizing that. I think normalizing that kind of behavior helps us not escalate in our own
Yeah.
emotions. It's like I personalized everything, because personalization is one of my really unhealthy coping mechanisms. Still working on that to this day. So you also write a whole lot about the sensitive child. So
Mm.
just any word as we're really closing this time, promise from the deepest part of my heart. For the parent of a highly sensitive child, that would have been me. I'm just very curious if you have one or two tools that you mention in the book that might service them.
Yeah. So high sensitivity is a trait or a temperament. It's not a medical diagnosis. I get that question a lot, so I just want to say that from the beginning. It's not a
That's
medical
good.
diagnosis. And essentially, these children are deep processors. They have more
Mhm.
sensitive nervous systems. They're creative. They're highly intelligent. They're typically asking deep, deep questions. The challenge of highly sensitive children, particularly when they're young, is that they have big emotional reactions
Yeah.
to sensory and stress. They become very frustrated and resistant in the transitions of the day, like trying to get them out the door or trying to get them
Oh.
dressed or trying to get them to bed. They very anti doing what you need them to do.
Hmm.
And I think they have a very critical and harsh inner voice. And
Hmm.
so parents often become a bit worried about them into their future of like, are they going to be fearful? Are they going to be,
Hmm.
feeling like
Hmm.
guilt and shame? With highly sensitive children, they really respond best when they have at least one person in their life that
Hmm.
empathetically understands them.
Oh, it's going to make me cry. It's so beautiful. And how does that
So
look like? What does that look like?
it looks like normalizing their experience of the world.
Okay.
So again,
Makes
it's
sense.
not about saying when they have the meltdown and when they have that, it's not about saying, hey, it's fine for you to scream or hit or whatever it is that they do, but to start first in because a lot of times they are so intelligent that they're hyper aware of what they've
Oh,
done
yeah.
wrong. And many
Ah,
times with discipling these children, you don't
right.
even need to tell them. Other
No,
children, sometimes they like have no idea that they've
no
done
clue. This is so good,
that.
Sarah Boyd.
Highly sensitive children, they likely have already criticized themselves more than anything you could say as a parent. And so coming alongside them and gently saying, hey, I can see that you had a really big day or it was really hard for you, or just saying that stuff first and normalizing them of like that you're not that you're not deficient in any way. There's nothing wrong with how you experience the world. How you experience the world is normal.
Yeah.
And we don't hit
boundaries.
Bad toys or
And we teach you about boundaries as well.
Yeah.
Right. Why do you think transitions are hard in the day? Like moving from, going out the door or going to bed. Is it normalize that for me? I'm very curious.
Yeah.
I would have.
Yeah, so a lot of times they get a picture in their head, an internal picture of what they want to do, and they also don't like change. So visual routine charts can really help children who are highly sensitive, where you're showing them, hey, we are getting dressed, then we do this, then we do this, as opposed
an order,
to
a flow.
An order and flow, as opposed to they're just playing on the floor and you're like, come on, we've got to quick
Time to
get
go.
up and
Hustle. Hubba. Used to say hubba.
Yes.
Chop. This is so good. Sarah, I have worked you hard. I have worked you very, very hard.
Oh, good.
I tell you what, you are a voice that is so needed, and I thank you so hard. Please do something very kind for yourself today, because you have worked so hard to really help us understand, because you know what? We need a next generation that knows how to self-regulate and manage their emotions and be healthy emotional beings.
Yes.
I think the future is dependent upon this. I used to say it needed to be their spiritual journey, but I have come to learn in my older years that it's almost the flip, like focus more on that emotional health and that emotional regulation alongside of the development of them and the discipleship of them. Because I know my generation, we bypassed a lot, spiritually bypassed it. So this is a word for now, and I am so grateful. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. I've loved chatting with you.
Heartlifter, I'm in tears. What a vital message for right now. No matter where you are in your mothering, maternal presence journey, this is for you. We need to be emotionally healthy in order to become spiritually healthy. So I highly recommend Sarah's book. Please be sure to subscribe to the podcast and head over to Substack, Heartlift Central, so we can keep this conversation going. Until next time.